Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
I just put out a message for the radio listeners because I received an error message when starting the broadcast. So if radio listeners, they are confirming. Yes, thank you very much. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال الله تعالى في القرآن الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم وتخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير. That verse, which you will have heard recited many times, translates as follows. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. And whether you manifest what is in your minds or hide it, Allah will call you to account according to it. So He forgives whom He pleases and punishes whom He pleases, and Allah is powerful over all things. This is at the end of Surah al-Baqarah, just before the end, chapter 2, verse 284. And in this khutbah, I'll discuss this verse and its meaning. In the previous 3 khutbahs on the topic of the causes of Islamophobia, I mentioned that one view on Islam, commonly expressed by Christian writers, is that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, while he was preaching his message at Makkah before the Hijrah, was doing this sincerely without any worldly motives, and he was showing the best moral qualities in his character. But they say that as soon as he arrived in Medina after the Hijrah, he acquired worldly ambitions of being a ruler and a conqueror, and he wanted to use religion to satisfy his own personal desires. And they allege that from being a persecuted and humble preacher at Makkah, when he moved to Medina, he became a ruthless and brutal ruler, particularly as far as treating non-Muslims was concerned. Now, the opening sentence of the above verse is relevant to answering this allegation. It says that God provides guidance both for our spiritual progress and for our physical earthly lives. And if I repeat that first sentence, to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. Generally, people think that the purpose of a religion is to show them how to enter heaven, how through prayer, fasting, charity, etc., they can come closer to God, show good qualities at an individual level, and have spiritual experiences. And then after death, they are in heaven with Allah. And people generally exclude national and communal matters from the scope of religion. And these matters are things like the administration of justice in the country, running the economy, running the state, matters of war and peace, and international dealings. They treat all these matters as worldly and matters to do with the earth, to do with this world. And the Christian critics of Islam, whom I mentioned above, they have Jesus as their great model. Now, as long as the Holy Prophet Muhammad remained at Makkah, he was facing conditions similar to what Jesus faced during his entire time of preaching. And therefore, the Holy Prophet's Christian critics accept the Holy Prophet's sincerity as long as he was facing just those conditions. But Jesus did not have to face the conditions which the Holy Prophet faced at Medina, where he and his followers became a self-governing community. And moreover, they had war made upon them by their opponents. And there is no example provided by Jesus, Isa alayhi salam, regarding such situations. In fact, that was not a part of his mission. So Christians can't look to that example and assess the Holy Prophet's life at Medina accordingly. Now, the only example in the Bible of a community which was established by God, which received revelation, and which had an organized state with its own laws and was involved in relations with other nations and in war and peace with other nations. The only example in the Bible is that of the Bani Israel, the Israelites, and this starting with Musa alayhi salam and continuing to David and Solomon, who were heads of state, and they fought battles. Dawood and Suleiman, David and Solomon alayhi salam. But you see, their system of law, based on the teachings of Moses, could not be applied permanently or universally, especially because it was so harsh against other nations. So as a result, Christian societies came to believe that such worldly matters to do with the war and peace, running the state, they fall outside the scope of being regulated by religious teachings. And they came to believe that, unfortunately, the only way of handling such matters is to use any kind of method, fair or foul, and any kind of unscrupulous means for your self-interest, because they came to believe that this is how the world works. And you can see this happening there around the world. But the Holy Quran contradicts this by saying that whether it is matters related to the next world or to this world, God has provided guidance and moral values for both. So I will now refer to some words from the famous Lord's Prayer of the Christians. And that prayer has the same importance in the Christian religion as the Surah Fatiha does in Islam. And this prayer, Lord's Prayer, was taught by Jesus himself. It is in the Gospels. And I refer to two lines from it in which the person praying addresses God and says, "Your kingdom come." In other words, let your kingdom come. We're looking forward to it. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. By your will is meant whatever you will. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And in this prayer, the person praying looks forward to the coming of God's kingdom. And when it comes, then the prayer says, God's will is going to be done on earth as it is done in heaven. And this, I think, is the same as the words from the Holy Quran that I've been discussing. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. And the Lord's Prayer says, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now, on earth, man has the opportunity to go against God's will. We all know that. Now, you can say that in the next life, it is only God's will which prevails. Man cannot go against God's will in the next life. But even on earth, as regards the natural phenomena which we see around us, we see weather, we see the seas, the sun, the moon, etc., plants, trees. As regards those, it is God's will which prevails. They're controlled by laws of nature. But human beings, in their dealings with one another, put their self-interest above everything. And they employ all kinds of methods, including deceiving, falsehood, usurping others' rights. They do all this to get what they themselves desire. And they, in fact, believe that there is no other way to succeed in the world materially except by unscrupulous methods. But the Holy Quran came with a teaching to show how God's will can be done on earth. How in business dealings, in politics, in international relations, there can be a moral framework in which you can work. And as you know, mankind, especially in the last 100 years, has realized this. And so there are all these conventions on warfare, human rights, etc., where they try to set up a moral framework to control these things, to regulate these things. But there are other ways also of looking at the words. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. There are some religions and also movements within religions, including within Islam, which consider spiritual exercises to be the all-important thing. And this is all you need to do. They are not concerned with anything in the world outside their spiritual practices. For example, there are Muslim movements which also existed before and at the time of Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib, founder of the Ahmadiyya movement, which teach that all a Muslim needs to involve himself in is remembrance of Allah, zikrullah, and chanting various formulae, various expressions, and performing various rituals. And they say this brings him closer to God. And that is the entire aim of life. Now, in the time of the founder of the Ahmadiyya movement, Islam was under heavy criticism from certain other religions, and also modern philosophies, modern thinking was weakening people's faith in religion as such. While this was happening, these spiritual movements that I mentioned were unconcerned, unbothered to meet these external challenges. They wanted Muslims to live cut off from the ideas arising in the world. And at the opposite end, there were Muslim groups who undervalued the religious practices of Islam, didn't consider them important at all, and they believed that for Muslims to progress in the world, they just needed to follow and copy the modern Western civilization. So one side was concerning itself with the heavens only, and the other side was concerning itself with earthly and worldly matters only. But Allah says here that both belong to Him, whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. And so Muslims should concern themselves with both. Now this verse then goes on to say, and whether you manifest what is in your minds, وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ, or hide it, or tukhuhu, Allah will call you to account according to it. Yuhasibkum bihillah. And where it says here, whether you manifest what is in your minds, ma fi anfusikum, the word translated as minds means your soul, yourself. Fi anfusikum. Now the heavens and the earth, which have just been mentioned in this verse, are visible to everyone. But what is in your mind and in your soul, ma fi anfusikum, that is not visible to anyone else except Allah. And what is inside our minds or souls can be displayed or manifested in our actions and deeds, or what is in our minds or souls can just remain inside us, just as a thought or an intention, but doesn't become an action. And what this verse says here is that Allah assesses a person by what is in his heart and mind. Ma fi anfusikum. When a person does a good deed, whether it is prayer, fasting, charity, or some good deed towards other people, God values it by what is in that person's heart. Now, generally, people think that the religious practices of Islam, like prayer and fasting, are only meant to be done with the body in a mechanical way, and they don't involve any feeling or attraction in the heart. There's nothing in your heart making you like doing it, making you want to do it. It's just a ritual. And this verse contradicts any such idea. It says that regardless of whether your action was open and manifested and known to other people, or it was hidden from view, God will call you to account according to what was in your mind. And this hiding, which is mentioned here, whether you manifest what is in your minds or hide it, it can refer to someone's actual deeds, which he does secretly, like his private prayers or giving charities secretly. But it can also mean something which he did not do while intending in his heart to do it. So in that sense, these words, whether you manifest what is in your minds or hide it, they refer to the intentions which you put into practice and the intentions which you could not carry out in practice. That becomes the hidden thing. Now, a person may have fully intended to do some good deed. That is what is in his mind. But he was prevented from doing it by some difficulty, some circumstance, which is out of his control. That is still counted in his favor by Allah. And on the other hand, a person may have full intention to commit a wrong deed, a misdeed. He may have planned doing it. But some external circumstance, something outside his control, prevents him from doing it. It's not that he controlled himself, something outside didn't let him do it. Allah will still hold him accountable for that intention, even though it didn't go beyond the point of being a thought and an intention. But Allah is merciful. In case of someone who intended to do a good deed but was prevented, he still has a reward with God. But in case of someone who intended to do a bad deed but was prevented, he himself didn't stop it, but he got prevented, he does not incur any punishment, even though he's accountable before God for that intention, but he does not incur any punishment. Whereas the one who intended to do good but couldn't do it, he gets the reward. And the Holy Quran tells us, I'll quote a verse here in just translation, whoever brings good, in other words, does a good deed, he will have better than it. That is to say that his reward will be more than what that deed itself deserved. And whoever brings evil, those who do evil will be recompensed only for what they did. Chapter 28, verse 84. And it is repeated several times in the Quran that those who do evil will suffer punishment only for what they actually did, and not for their unfulfilled intentions. And it is also stated in many places in the Holy Quran that those who do good receive a return better than it, not only for the good deeds they actually did, but also for the intentions they could not fulfill for some reason beyond their control. Not because it was not because they were lazy, but something happened to prevent them. And lastly, this verse says, فَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ عَلَىٰ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That God forgives whom he pleases, and he punishes whom he pleases. And here, whom he pleases does not mean that Allah decides to forgive someone or to punish someone for no reason, without any principle. Allah does not act like an inconsistent person who does something just because he feels like it without following any principle. So he forgives whom he pleases and he punishes whom he pleases does not mean that there are no principles or rules governing whom Allah punishes and whom he forgives. What it means is that while we as human beings, we may think that a certain person is going to be forgiven, and we may think that someone else, oh, he is definitely going to be punished. We may think that. But Allah has infinite knowledge and his mercy is infinite. Allah may do the opposite. That the person we think is bound to be forgiven, Allah may punish him. And the person we think is bound to be punished, Allah may forgive him, because our knowledge is limited. We can only know and we can only teach the ways which lead to forgiveness and the ways which lead to punishment, ways which lead to incurring Allah's punishment. But we cannot know who has truly acted on those ways which lead to forgiveness and who has not. So this is the meaning of فَيَغْفِرُ لِمَن يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَن يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That Allah has power over all things. بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم إنه تعالى جواد كريم ملك بر رؤوف رحيم. Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayh. Wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu. Wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. And now the Durood. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. That may Allah exalt and raise to a high position of great dignity and bless the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his true followers, as he made the same promise to Abraham, and that may that promise come true through the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his followers, and may they be a light and source of guidance to the earlier followers of Abraham by acting on the true teachings of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then a few prayers. Rabbana ighfir lana zunubana wa israfana fi amrina. Oh Lord, forgive us our faults and sins and our going to extremes in dealing with our affairs. Wa sabbit aqdamana, and make firm our feet, our footsteps. Wansurna alal qawmil kafirin, and grant us victory over all sorts of forces of unbelief, whether within us or outside us, and make us firm in that resolve to do that. Ameen. Rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana. Our Lord, do not make our hearts to go wrong after you have guided us. Wa hab lana min ladunka rahma, and grant us mercy from yourself. Innaka antal wahhab, you are the great granter of mercy. Ameen. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar. Oh Lord, grant us the good things of this world, but also the good things of the afterlife. And I've already discussed this point earlier. The things of this world and the things of the hereafter. May Allah grant us the good in both and save us from the punishment of the fire in both, in this world and in the hereafter. Ameen. And for people's illness, Azhib al-Basa Rabbin Nasir. O Lord of all people, take away all kinds of illnesses and distresses. Azhib al-Basa Rabbin Nasir. Washfi anta shafi, heal and you are the healer. La shafi illa anta, there is no healer except you. La shifa illa shifa'uka shifa'an la yughadiru saqama. There is no healing except your healing. Your healing removes all traces of illness. Ameen. And finally, Rabbana taqabbal minna. Oh Lord, accept all these prayers, accept our work in your way. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim, that you are the hearer of prayers and you are the best knower of how to accept them. Nakantu Samiyulili, Vatobalana, and turn to us mercifully. In Nakanta Tawabur Rahim, you are the one who always turns towards us with mercy, although we turn away from you. Ameen. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون عباد الله اذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله تعالى أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. And now the 2 rak'ah Jummah first prayers.
اللہ اکبر اللہ اکبر اشہد ان لا الہ الا اللہ اشہد ان محمد رسول اللہ حی علی الصلاۃ حی علی الفلاح قد قامت الصلاۃ قد قامت الصلاۃ اللہ اکبر لا الہ الا اللہ
اللہ اکبر. الحمد للہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین اهدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین. یا ایھا الذین آمنوا اذا نودی للصلاۃ من یوم الجمعۃ فاسعوا الی ذکر اللہ وذروا البیع ذالکم خیر لکم ان کنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضیت الصلاۃ فانتشروا فی الارض وابتغوا من فضل اللہ واذکروا اللہ کثیرا لعلکم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. سبحان. سمع الله لمن حمده
ربنا ولك الحمد
حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا. الله أكبر. سبحان. اللہ اکبر. رب اغفر لي. اللہ اکبر. سبحان. اللہ اکبر. الحمد للہ رب العالمین الرحمن الرحیم مالک یوم الدین ایاک نعبد و ایاک نستعین اهدنا الصراط المستقیم صراط الذین انعمت علیہم غیر المغضوب علیہم ولا الضالین. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين ويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده
ربنا ولك الحمد
حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا. الله أكبر. سبحان الله. الله أكبر. رب اغفر لي. الله أكبر. سبحان الله. الله أكبر. التحيات السلام عليك أشهد أن اللهم صل على اللهم بارك نہ کرنی ربی جلنی السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ اللہم انت السلام ومنک السلام تبارک ربنا وتعالی یا ذا الجلال والاکرام استغفر اللہ ربی من کل ذنب واتوب الی ربی اغفر وارحم وانت خیر الراحمین یا حی یا قیوم وبرحمتک استغیث وبرحمتک یا رب العالمین. That then is the end of this Friday broadcast. And after I terminated, we can then say our 2 Rakah Sunnah prayers to complete the Friday prayer. Please remember that in 2 days, on Sunday the 6th of March, we have our usual monthly meeting at our center, Darussalam, Wembley. And as has been happening in the past few meetings over the last year and a half or so, it will be largely through Zoom, and that link has been distributed. So that will be at 3 p.m., starting at 3 p.m. UK time. And it normally lasts for at the most an hour and a half. So it would have finished by about 4:30 or before. So thank you very much for joining. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعلیکم السلام.